let's hit some of the stuff that'll be easy, and then we'll get a copy of his, and we'll go from there. How's that? That work?
That works.
So, comp plan update, we told y'all. April 27th is the drop-in. RDC is doing that. I don't have anything to do with it other than they do the presentation. It'll be a drop-in between 5 and 6 is where we left it. So we actually meet with Planning Commission. That's in your box tomorrow night. So we have Shockley Road event venue planning. So there's two things going on with that. We brought in, as you know, Planning Commission, wanted the independent attorney to hear that. So that's one item, just to remind y'all, Joey's already told that. The other one is that I'll remind you is that we have an ordinance that allows for that an event use if the property is used overall for its agricultural use. And that very well may be the case. We'll hear that tomorrow night and we'll go from there. Public hearing is tomorrow night on that. Proposed variance on Norton 6203 Carter Street. Minimum square footage went 1,400 square feet. He wants 1,000 square feet. And it's primarily for just the schoolhouse alone. Is everybody familiar with that? So that won't be heard. Joey hasn't given me dates on that, but I'm sure it'll be heard in May, which is going to be fun because we have a proposed annexation rezoning on our 4.5 acres over here on County Line Road between, just for a point of reference, Athens Street where it tail ends in the county line. There's 3 parcels right there. The first parcel is 4.57. So he wants to subdivide that from, it's currently zoned agricultural R1, and that'll go to the Planning Commission. It's an annexation, so I send notice to the county. They have 10 days to respond to that annexation. And then, so we don't have dates on that, but that'll also, earliest it could be heard is in May as well. And then I have 2 conversations going on about potential industrial development on 365 for annexation and rezoning. One of them will be a 33-acre tract. The other one will be a combination of another 30-acre tract and another as much as 220 acres.
Which one is behind like my house?
None of the ones we're talking about. None of them.
Like that one's okay.
So the ones I'm talking about are what we have current applications. Now, I put the new proposed annexations because they're trying to beat some deadlines. Well, deadlines are defined by law. So they, you know, I told them the sooner they get them in, then we can begin to advertise the Planning Commission for May. But if they don't get them in soon enough, we end up going into June and there's nothing I can do about that. So.
We're concerned about that in there around us.
Well, the traffic coming out down Belton Road.
So I'll just remind y'all that property is already zoned R3. What I want to see is the final on the site plan.
What I don't see as many houses as he proposes to go out.
Well, he's going back to the old R3 and your attorney gets to fight him on that, but he's already proposed it. So it'll be.
Cause it's getting to be like over on Blue Island, probably the water situation, creeks and all that over there.
So you're right, that property has a lot of water on it. So what I've seen conceptually, he stays out all the buffers. He has to do that. So then it's a matter of limiting. That one's going to be a fight. If there's
how come tractor trailer is more coming down?
So he has storage back there right now. I mean, that's what he's doing now. We've looked at it any number of times.
No, but I mean, I'm talking about in general about the traffic on 365, but tractor trailers are running through there a good bit now.
They sure are.
You know,
Like some of these stuff with the
but
DOT
the
and whatever.
question, so the problem that I have, and you may not be, what law have they broken by taking deliveries back? That's the problem.
Well, I'm not talking about going to die, I'm just talking about,
Oh, you're talking about Belton Bridge?
yeah.
Belton
Well,
Bridge.
that's a whole nother story. So
Yeah, Belton
that's
Bridge.
just a matter of enforcement, and our friends at Hall County will help us out with that.
Well, we need to get some help from them because we're having a bunch of tractor trailers coming through there.
Well, good. Now, that one I can do something about. I thought you were talking about on the
People
12
go through
acre
there at
tract.
night.
Huh?
They go through at nighttime.
Yeah. And
Well, I thought you'd be with the patrol at night.
they ball in the jack too when they come down there.
They sure do.
They ain't playing, they ball in the jack.
And he's trying to buy land in Jewel right now.
Is he really?
Yep, yep.
He ain't gonna sell though. He's not in the mood to sell, is he?
No, but he's trying to buy the back.
So, hey,
Because he's wanting
so do
something
me a
even more.
favor, both y'all, do me a favor. If you see a tractor trailer and we know, you know, who it might be, roadway or somebody like that, well, let us know, because that's another thing, you know. The problem is with the tractor trailers, you gotta catch them doing it. But if you tell us it's roadway or if it's one of our haulers, what I've seen
A lot of
is,
dump trucks.
huh?
A lot of dump trucks.
You know, and then the problem with dump trucks is they're allowed in local, but they gotta prove it. You know what I'm saying? So just saying it,
Well, yesterday, you see that big tractor trailer that came down through there yesterday?
Yep.
That blue tractor?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, he was something on it.
He was getting it.
that's unusual. All right, Tony, what you got for us that they can look at?
Okay, so, this is the ICC Building Code recommendations. I can send you all a copy of these. I've tried to, you know, kind of, create just a list of the things that I think need to be changed. And this is a combination of things that have been brought up by citizens over, you know, the last several months. I know we were talking about this, you know, even in September and October. But the first thing that I would recommend that we do, and I'm glad you've got a copy of the printed version there, Joe. There is, I believe it's item 2. Let's see, you are looking, do you have a page where it's got items 1, 2, and 3 in addition to the R series? Yeah, it may be. Take a look at that second page. There's a second page on that.
Presented?
No, item 2, right there, the first paragraph. Just so that you've got it there, you can see it. The only thing I was recommending there is verbiage change. And this is, I believe this was brought up in an actual council voting session. I thought notes were taken on it. It's just the sentence itself was incorrect. It starts out, you know, the building official may assign administration to the codes enforcement, city marshal, police department if adopted for enforcement, additional citations or investigations as deemed necessary. That sentence is fine. The next sentence says, any action by the above named entities. Right? Is that what you've got there? And it really needs to say an applicant may appeal any action by the above named entities. Because what that was referencing is it's saying, grammatically, it was just saying that the building official or the marshal or police could appeal. And I know that's not what the sentence was intended to be. So if you just change the sentence to an applicant may appeal any action by the above named entities to the Board of Appeals / City Council with regard to application and or interpretation of code, unless the purported act was criminal in nature, which will be heard by the municipal court. And I will make sure that you have a copy of this.
So I need that, so we
Yes.
can give it to Joey.
Yeah,
He's
and
the one who finalized.
it's written right there. I've everything that I intend to change, if you can see, is highlighted in yellow. And there were things, in order to do that, I've struck through some of the items. So you'll be able to see those easily. So that was just a simple grammar change. The next one is also in item 2. I think you're there. It's the section that talks about the permitting, inspections, violation, and stop work orders. And I think what was mentioned is that it came on like a fill in the blank form that was mentioned.
Well,
that you could put
actually,
in a
IBC
particular,
has it on there, but anyway, go ahead.
right, that you put in a particular dollar amount.
They had recommended 1,500, and as I remember, y'all knocked it down to 500.
Right.
Right.
Yeah.
And
And
you want to knock down 250, right?
I'm recommending that it gets knocked down to 250. Keeping with what was mentioned to me in some of the emails, this is not a revenue generating thing for us. But if you read in permitting, it says any person who fails to obtain a building permit who erects, constructs, alters, or repairs a building structure shall pay a fee of, and what you guys had originally had was $500 or an amount equal to double the normal cost of permitting, whichever is greater, and the cost of the permit. So if somebody failed to get a permit, the penalty then would be 3 times whatever it would be, essentially.
That was encourage them to get a permit.
Right. And, I'm not sure what the smallest amount of a permit is, but I'm guessing it's probably more than $225. So you triple that based on what's written here in this law. My recommendation was to move this down to 250 and strike the part about being an amount equal to double the normal cost of permitting, whichever is higher. So if you failed to get a permit, you would pay $250 and the cost of the permit, which is what we had intended them to do in the first place. So they would get whatever the cost of the permit may be, whether that's $200, $400, $800, whatever it may be, but they would have the fee of $250. That's the only thing that they would incur. Now, the reason I did this, and I'm making the recommendation to go down to 250, is with the understanding that, when we're talking about folks that are pulling permits, you've got planned urban developments, you've got builders that are building neighborhoods, and then you've got citizens. And I think that and correct me if I'm wrong, I think that if you're a builder, you've probably been doing this a while and you know how to pull permits. So who's going to be hit with this is someone who failed to pull a permit that's just a citizen, and they don't do this very often. And I think if you also go take a look at our median income in the city of Lula, I think that $500 multiplied by 3 is severely detrimental to somebody who just didn't think they needed a permit.
Well, what about just dropping them?
So phone calls solve that problem.
I'm sorry,
Just leaving the 500, just dropping the multiplied times 3 out.
what's the purpose? Are we revenue generating?
It's not revenue generating, it's make you get the permit.
Well, so is 250, it makes you get the permit.
So
I'm
just
just
for clarity-
telling you that my recommendation is to lower it to 250 because I know that.
But you should be penalized, Tony. If you get out here for DUI, same thing, they're not gonna drop it to 250 just because you didn't know no better or whatever.
All right.
They're gonna drop to 0.
And Joe mentioned, all they need is to make a phone call, right? That was your suggestion? And what's that phone call?
The
What,
city hall finds me a permit or not. I mean,
I'm sorry, I'm losing, here, I've lost some of that.
Y'all lost me on that
So
one.
yours, but just make
My
sure, your
recommendation-
cost is cost of permit plus 250 if they're found.
right.
So right now,
But
tell me the rest of that
that-
conversation.
But to prevent that from happening, you make a phone call to city hall to find out whether you need a permit or not. Tony made a comment, sometimes they don't know if they need a permit, but call city hall and get a permit. That's what it costs.
Yeah. A builder, they're going to know what they need
Yeah.
to do.
Yeah.
A citizen may not know. Somebody that does this so infrequently.
But not,
So what I'm hearing is you would rather it be 500 to penalize a citizen for making a mistake.
No, for vagrantly violating the law.
Well, we're writing the law.
The vagrantly violating the law.
but not,
Well, no.
not knowing there's no
That's-
excuse though, Tony.
Okay. I'm just gonna let you all run with that. I would make the same recommendation on inspections. Any person permitted project who fails to obtain, schedule inspection, and complete any segment of work shall pay a fee of what was $500. I'm recommending now $250 because that applies to each inspection or portion that they failed to comply with, and shall satisfy the work. And then what you guys have is, well, it's grammatic errors, preformed, it should be performed. by a registered structural engineer, and I'm recommending you strike through that. With the acknowledgement of the building official, you can leave that. Unless the permitted address/work has prior approval of the building inspector/official to obtain inspection by a registered engineer in advance of the work being performed, no work shall continue until additional fees are paid and the building official is satisfied that the work has been completed or corrected per code. So again, I'm sure the same argument that you would have for leaving it at 500 would apply here. Then you've got violations.
Can I stop
Yes,
right
sir.
there? So you said, on this one, you wanted to strike the preformed registered structural engineer?
Change it to performed.
Oh, no, I got that.
But it would-
Proformed,
Okay.
but did you say you wanted to strike registered?
Yes.
Okay, so let me just give you a heads up on that. If there's one thing through the years that I've found has been a problem, is somebody gets ahead of the game and they put in the stuff, and we allow for the engineer to come in and say, hey, it's good. And we probably had that happen twice in the last year, if not more than that. And that actually saves the poor guy who made the mistake to begin with. And in both those cases, it was a
What you gonna do with that out there on Building Road that happened
well,
this past week?
I got pictures here, but I want to, that's the one item that saves the poor guy that may have done wrong, not unintentionally. Because otherwise, you got to tell the guy, tear it all out until I can inspect it. But if an engineer signs off on it, we walk away because we're happy with an engineer.
Yeah, I would assume that, that you would need that engineer, because they're failing to obtain or schedule an inspection and completes a section. I would think that if it's visible, if the work is visible, you wouldn't necessarily, like you said, they would have to tear something down or whatever. I think that it just has to be inspected.
Well, but oftentimes, like if you pour a floor on top after you were to put the footings down, you couldn't inspect the footings. If you have an engineer that comes out and says, he digs them all up and he puts his PE stamp by it, we never say another word.
Yeah, okay.
We had a residential place in this last year, same thing, where they made some structural changes to a deck. We weren't happy with it. Actually, if they'd have followed code, we'd have been able to follow it, but there were so many changes in it. The PE signed off on it and we never said another word. If he put his stamp on it, we never questioned it.
Okay.
If we, just to let you know, if we get a set of plans in here and it comes with a PE stamp, we validate, but we don't question it. That's his livelihood, and who are we to get in his way? Hey, it's a blessing for us.
So I would just make a recommendation then that on inspections to keep in the registered structural engineer. I'm okay with that, if that's the way you want to go with it. Violation,
250 is what you're proposing.
I'm proposing 250 on the inspections, failing to obtain and schedule an inspection. The next one, of course, is similar in nature. Violations. Any person or permitted project who fails to follow code will be subject to a fee of $250 is what my recommendation is, rather than $500 per violation. There could be multiple violations in any particular project, and I would expect there to be so. So it says any person or permitted project who fails to follow code will be subject to a fee of, again, my recommendation, $250 per violation if the matter is not corrected within 7 days, because all we really want is, the compliance here.
Right.
Safety. It's about safety. Repeat violations of the same code will automatically result in the fee being applied. Violations shall result in the reinspection fees being applied, which that's true, can agree with that. And no work shall continue until additional fees are paid and the building official is satisfied the work has been completed or corrected per code. So the only thing I'm asking to be changed there is to move that from 500 down to 250 per violation. The next thing, stop work orders. I'm sure you'll be happy to hear this. I don't have any recommendation to remove that from 500 to 250. And the reasoning behind that, I'll read it. Any person or permitted project who has issued posted a stop work order and continues to perform additional work other than corrective measures shall be subject to a fee of $500. No work shall continue until additional fees are paid and the building official is satisfied the work has been completed or corrected per code. Now, why did I not reduce that from 500 to 250? Because in this case,
Violation of the law.
no, this is more than likely a citizen who we've gone through the trouble to make sure that they knew, and there is a stop work order, and they knowingly choose to do this.
Kept them going.
Okay? So that to me is different than I didn't realize I needed a permit, or I got a permit, but I didn't know that I needed to call for this third inspection, or just the violation for not following code. Those can be mistakes. All three of those can be mistakes. The stop work order, that cannot be a mistake because you now have put them on notice.
You're not knowing those, that's not apply to the law.
But we always, I'll say this.
Make
So-
sure that when you say that you know all the laws that you're subject to and you're familiar with every single one of them. That's my recommendation that someone might say, if you take that stance.
That's true. All they got to do is call and ask.
Well, so oftentimes, so let's just get some clarity. First, the examples that are being put forward, thank goodness, we have not experienced. Now, we have experienced where people didn't do things to code, and we have to be careful here. When I say, obviously, it's easy to say, well, you just need to build that by code. Well, we can't tell you what to fix and correct and make that satisfied. We can tell you what the code requires. And then sometimes they can comply, sometimes they can't. And they have to tear it out and start all over again. It depends, but I can just tell you, it just doesn't happen. We generally say, when I say they, that would be our building inspector. She works with everybody very well. And if they run into a nightmare, and she's run into some that want to say, well, that's not code, and she has to whip it out and show it to them. But if she runs into a problem she works with, we just don't have that issue. Thank goodness. Now, what does happen is people don't realize, it's like the decks and having the separation between the banisters and what have you that they put up. Those are all things that she works really well with people on to say, no, unfortunately, this is what the code requires and that sort of thing. So it's kind of common in place. I know, Garnet, you wanted me to talk about this one you mentioned just a minute ago. So here's an example of one that we looked at the other day. And here was a registered contractor, didn't pull a permit. And then just look at the roof system that he was proposing to do. I mean, not, Doug and I aren't code, but I mean, this is just crazy. And, when I asked the guy, so his name's George, why didn't you get a permit? And he said, I didn't think I wanted to get one. And I said, well,
What he told you?
we put a stop work order on it. But the sad thing is we talked to the owner, and at some point, the owner becomes somewhat responsible to making sure, and we explained to her that, it was putting on, that, we're putting a stop work order on it, and they couldn't perform any more work. And of course, that was a burden to her until she filled it out. But worse, if you see what they were doing there, not even close to code. I mean, that's the worry part. Here's a good one for y'all.
Well, they was getting with it up there for a few
Now,
days.
keep in mind that when you do fine or fee a contractor, you're not really doing that.
You're going after the property.
It's the owner that's going to have
Which
to
is
bear the
like in
burden.
this lady, she said, well, I thought if I had a new roof, I didn't have to have a permit. Well, look at that. I mean, that's a whole new roof system. And here's a good one for you we found on Friday as well.
Well, I can show you one over we don't fix it.
This is just, and if that doesn't get any better. And then the whole roof system that they put in, and now the property owner, and I'm not one to argue, I don't do code, but the property owner is saying, well, I can't believe for a little thing like that, y'all are gonna make us, file with code. Well, hopefully they'll work that out between the building inspector and what have you, but clearly putting two by four blocks to shore up a post on height. If you didn't see the other side, they only had one block on the other side. You know, but I mean, there's and that's an example where, you know, by happenstance, we came across it because it's towards the back of the yard. We wouldn't have normally seen that, you know, but we were out there on another issue entirely. But that's where we're doing the consumer a favor. He doesn't want that done. You know, no way. And the same thing on the poor woman, as you just pointed out. I don't know what she's paying the contractor, but trust me, for all the lumber they got going in that new roof system, and then put it together like they did, holy mackerel, we're saving her a bundle, because they're gonna tear all that out, and the roof would have leaked. I mean, did you see it, Gene? The way tell me that roof wouldn't leak.
It was,
Oh my
you know,
God.
it couldn't.
Yeah, and those guys, you know, it's not ours to say you hired the wrong or the right contractor, but that worries me.
One thing I suggest they should have, before they do any work, when they do that, they need to have a business license so you can go back to the builder, whoever it is.
So there goes the problem again, I'll bring back up. So we have an occupational tax, we don't have a business license per se. Now, you know, to be a registered contractor in the state of Georgia is a whole nother deal. That's not.
You got too many of the flybys though to go out here and do them.
Well, it goes back to what
This is what
y'all
you
get
get.
past that, but
This is what you get when you get
our current
flybys.
law doesn't allow us to do that.
Over on 52, there's a deck over there on 52. I'd say it's about 10 foot high. It never would have passed inspection.
So is it new?
It's about a year old. I saw it about 6 months ago. It's about a year old.
They should bring it to, because that's the same thing. If we don't see it, it's like this one. We actually got the call on this one on Belton Bridge, but it is hidden up on top of a hill. If you weren't looking for it, I drove by there twice. I didn't see it.
Well, I wouldn't have known this about it.
Lord, when I looked, I saw it.
I was took down there to look at it to tell him what he needed, and contractor come in there, well, you don't need a permit, he told him. And I said, yeah, you need a permit. You need the permit to have this done. He'd already had it done.
We'll be glad to look at them if you point them out to us, which is just like this one. This one, I can just tell you, that's fresh lumber. I don't know when they did it, but that one ain't gonna fly. So, you know, but my example is we work normally with everybody. That's two examples where they're a little challenging. So is that what you want me to say on that one? Because you want me to bring that one up on Belton Bridge. So
Yeah, you
that's-
covered it good.
All right, what else you got coming?
Well, back on the stop work orders, there's a misspelling. It's a preform instead of perform additional work.
Well, that's all taken from them, so they're doing good.
First sentence there. Okay. The next one, and trust me, we're really almost done. There's only 1, 2, 3, 4 things left. Okay. There's if you go, I believe, I'm trying to remember, it's in the dumpster section, which I think is item 2. Continue on. I think it's on the next page for you, Joe. I may be wrong.
It's no more pages.
No. Okay.
There's dumpsters here.
Yeah.
Item 3.
Oh, it is. Okay.
Item 3.
All right. So item B, referencing the dumpster, it has have a construction dumpster on site before construction begins for each permit issued.
We changed that.
So we changed that to have,
And
right?
what I'd been given, the print and electronic did not have it changed. So my statement was, and you'll see this when I send it to you, what verbiage was going to be used indicating the dumpster would not be needed until work is performed that generates the need for the dumpster. This was discussed and resolved in one of the council sessions.
Here's the wording.
So-
Here's the wording, and it's written as once grading is completed and/or before erection of building construction begins, second inspection for each permit issued.
Okay, great. Wish I had that copy. Didn't have that copy.
So this is okay
Yes. That verbiage sounds fine to me.
to you.
Your second grading, right? Now, you're referencing, can I see it real quick? This is assuming a lot of things here. Once grading is completed, which you may not have grading in some cases, or before erection.
And/or.
Yeah, before erection of building construction begins. So before you build, and the second inspection for each permit issued. So is it?
First, supposed to be foundation.
Right. The idea was not to burden. That's what was one of the recommendations that came from the public comments. Was, too soon, too early, and this way.
Right.
This was their solution.
Right, and that makes sense. I like the second inspection part. Okay, So that verbiage works. Just remember that when you get this recommendation. The next thing, it's a larger section, and there really is a couple of things with it. It's the R105.2, work exempt from permit, so no permit required. This, of course, is from the IRC. They've indicated 10 items that would not need permits in their eyes. And I know that one of the items you did change, well, there were actually 2 on there.
Items 1 and 10, they changed.
And items 1, I think you guys did move back and say, okay, agreed, that doesn't need a permit. So item 1, my recommendation is that you take all 1 through 10 and don't require permits, just like the IBC recommended be done. Okay?
So item 1 was, other than storm shelters, 1-story detached accessory structure provided that the floor area does not exceed 200 square feet.
Give me a shanty out there.
Right, so they didn't change that, they have actually applied that. Is that, isn't that what y'all told?
No permit needed on that, right?
That's what it
No.
says. It says,
Those items-
permits shall not be required for the
But
following
item
items.
1 and 10, you would require a permit.
Well, I think we're just saying the exact opposite here.
Well, I'm telling you what they told me.
I agree. What you're saying is exactly what I saw, which caused me alarm to really investigate this. That
So
was actually
200
the
square
cat.
foot, there's your problem, 10 by 20 foot structure is what it boils down to,
Yep.
so.
A shanty.
So that item would still apply, is what they've told me, that's mine.
When you say that item would still apply,
So permits
That
shall
item-
not be required for the following items. Item 1, you still would have to get a permit, and item 10, you would still have to get a permit.
I disagree.
Well, I'm
My
just telling you what they
recommenda-
told me.
I know. My recommendation is that you do what the IBC has already stated, that you don't need permits for that. This is, to me, to make a change to what they're saying is that, well, the city of Lula knows better, and items 1 and items 10, we really need a permit on. You trust them with everything else, but on these 2, you want to require a permit, and I think that's wrong. My recommendation is to leave it as is, the way the IBC intended, 1 through 10, no permit needed. Because otherwise, it gives the appearance that you're really trying to generate revenue. Because it doesn't seem to be any reason for us to do that. So that's my recommendation. There's a couple of grammatical errors, or I'm sorry, there's a couple of things in here. Number 2, fence is not over 8 feet high, and the number just
7
needs to be
feet.
corrected.
7 feet high. Mine says 7 feet high.
So.
Okay, I've got a copy that y'all
So
marked.
the reason we changed that is our current code shows 8 feet. And anything over 8 foot has to be engineered. And we don't want to require that anybody. They can go to Lowe's tomorrow and buy an 8-foot fence. That's the rationale behind that.
Yeah.
They're gonna change it to 8.
Yeah, and it just needs to reflect the proper, 2,438.134 millimeters. I think it's actually 0.4. But anyway, check on that. And I did put that in here. 3, retaining walls not over 4 feet. Everyone agrees on that. 4, water tank supported directly upon grade if the capacity does not exceed 5,000 gallons. And the ratio of the height to diameter or width does not exceed 2 to 1. No one's questioning that, no permit. Number 5, sidewalks and driveways. What's here says still requires driveway location permit approval. No problem with that. That's fine. Number 6, painting, papering, tiling, carpeting, cabinets, countertops, and similar finish work. No permit needed. Number 7, prefabricated swimming pools that are less than 24 inches deep. No one's questioning that. 8.
I'm gonna tell you, you got a problem with that. Just point it out again.
50 inch.
Huh? I'm gonna tell you, man, they put up prefab pools all day long that are 50 inches.
Yeah, I had one in my backyard,
Yeah.
and I put it up myself. What? I did.
Yeah.
I put it myself.
So what you're recommending,
I'm just
well,
telling you, that's a problem.
yeah, because what I'm looking at, you go by
That's
a
a
plastic
weekend
pool.
project.
Yeah. So what do y'all want to do with that? I don't have a problem if you want to increase that from 24 inches.
So we're gonna tell IBC that they're wrong about this one, but not the other one.
It's up to you.
That's why he phrased it, right? That's why
Y'all are my friends, so you can kid.
I think you get too many requirements.
up to
52
you.
inches, that's what this needs to be.
That's what I
Yeah.
thought.
Because it's a weekend project, somebody's gonna throw it up over the weekend, and we're gonna be knocking on their door when we finally find it.
And they got kids and they're gonna raise it up.
Yeah,
Yeah, that'll put up that bigger pool.
As your fine is probably gonna be, or your fee, instead of calling it a fine,
It's not gonna be a
it's probably
fine.
gonna be double the cost of the pool.
It's not gonna be, it's not,
Not gonna be a
but we
fine.
don't,
It's not gonna be
we don't
fee.
want to permit
No,
that.
it's not
Those
permitted, it's not
those are
permitted.
Free engineers,
I'm
they
just
put it
saying,
together right.
if you did
Yeah.
keep it at 24, your choice, you know,
You'll make mine and Doug's life miserable,
so.
and yours.
Do with that what you want, on number 7. Number 8, swings and other playground equipment. No permit needed. Number 9, window awnings supported by an exterior wall that do not project more than 54 inches from the exterior wall and do not require additional support. No one's questioning that.
we don't have awnings here.
Now, this is the one that has been marked up, that I've seen on multiple times. Number 10. So the committee had recommended multiple times that you require a permit on a deck not exceeding 200 square feet in area that are not more than 30 inches above grade at any point, are not attached to a dwelling, and do not serve the exit door required by section R 311.4.
For new construction. That's what,
That's not what it says here.
It is, this would all apply for new construction. We don't go out and enforce code on somebody that's already got existing.
Okay, so new construction, explain to me what that is constituting. What has to happen here for you to require a permit? Somebody builds a deck, 200 square feet, 1 foot off the ground, in the middle of their yard, not on any setbacks. Are you requiring a permit? Because you just said new construction.
new construction meeting these,
The answer
You
is,
said it.
meeting these dimensions.
they're saying any deck is what the committee had said, any deck needs to be inspected. Is that not what y'all
No,
were
it said,
saying?
it said any deck with new construction.
Yes. But
When
I'm
you
just
say
saying,
any deck with new construction, aren't you referring to any deck that's built?
No, we're talking about new construction. We're talking about, we're not going back to somebody's backyard and saying,
Had one 10 years.
If I went out tomorrow and I built a deck
All right,
that complied with this, and I did not get a permit, are you going to say that I violated this? I'm building, as I say, I build a deck, 200 square feet, not more than 30 inches off the ground tomorrow. I didn't get a permit. Why are you requiring that I get a permit for that?
well, just back to what they said, they want all decks permitted. That was what my notes were. That's what you strike.
Let's do it
number-
way, way.
number
And
10.
I disagree, and my recommendation, you will,
Huh?
yeah,
I
I'm
say
telling
do
you,
away with it and shut up arguing.
1 through 10, accept them all as the way they were written. If you want the
Turn it
24
over.
inches on the pool or the 50 inches on the pool, I don't care. But I'm telling you, these were the IBC that, vetted through all of this. And I do not like the fact that the city of Lula had proposed that we start permitting 2 of those items. And I think that gives you the appearance that you're trying to generate revenue over anything else, because there's already a governing body that said no. All right. Those are my recommendations. Y'all can bring it to the table as you wish, but just, I'm letting you know how I feel about it. R108 is the next section. And it's R108.6 and R113.4. So R108.6 refers to work commencing before permit issuance. Okay? Now,
Hold on. 108,
108.6.
Page 15, that's it.
does not have, okay, building permit evaluation. I'm sorry,
It's work commencing before permit issuance.
108.6.
108.6.
okay.
The only thing I'm making mention here or proposing is that you add a phrase, as, and reference then item number 2, because we talked about it. This is the fee or, that you're wanting to put for anyone not getting a permit, okay? because it's the same thing. Work commencing before permit issuance. Any person who commences work requiring a permit on a building, structure, electrical, gas, mechanical, or plumbing system before obtaining the necessary permits shall be subject to a fee established by the applicable governing authority. And that shall be in addition to the required permit fee. And I'm just making mention that rather than giving a dollar amount, because I think that's what you guys had proposed, was that you just leave it as referenced in item number 2. That way you don't have to go back and have issues where you've got $1 amount in one area of the document and another dollar amount in another, where you could end up in conflict. So I'm just saying, however you want to reference that section that's item 1, item 2, item 3, I think you should just, because I know that this applies in item number 2, the penalties or the fees, and you should just say, established by the applicable governing authority and referenced in item 2, that shall be in addition to the required permit fees. That way you absolve yourself of any mistake or omission by having a place listed twice in a document for a particular amount. So whatever amount you guys decide to go with, whether it's 500 or my recommended 250, that would apply back over there in item 2 under permitting, because it's the same thing. Any person who fails to obtain a building permit who erects, constructs, alters, or repairs a building structure shall pay a fee. And I know that this also talks about, run off to electrical, gas, mechanical, or plumbing, but you can also see that that's also part of item 2 as well. And then the exact same thing would apply for our 113.4 violation penalties. If you go back to item number 2, it specifically says violations. Any person or permitted project who fails to follow code will be subject to a fee of, my recommendation is $250 per violation if the matter is not corrected within 7 days. So if you go back down to the end of this document where you're looking at R113.4, it's a restatement of this stuff. It says any person who violates a provision of this code or fails to comply with any of the requirements thereof, who erects, constructs, alters, or repairs a building or structure in violation of the approved construction documents or directive of the building official or of a permit or certificate issued under the provisions of this code shall be subject to penalties as prescribed by law. And I'm recommending that you say, and reference then item number 2. Because
So
what
we're
it
just taking what their words were. Can we go back to
Sure.
R13?
113?
Yeah, point 2, didn't you have a comment on that? What was your comment?
I
Notice of violation?
didn't have a comment on 113.2.
Well, that's what, I thought you just read just before that.
It's for-
No, that was 108.6.
No, I thought you talked about R13. Well, go ahead. So you don't have any issues with, I just was trying to catch up with
Right
it.
here.
No, I got this.
So
But
what do
I
you
thought you
have
had
for
originally read
R113?
one. No, notice of violation.
I'll go back and look at it. Now you pique my interest.
Well, it's not on your sheet. You're good. There's no
Oh, you
change.
piqued my interest. I gotta look at it. Let's see.
So basically, well, I mean, we're just, in this particular example, we're just following what IRC actually recommended, the verbiage. Because that's
Yeah,
under
well, the
violation.
markup that I had dollar amounts on it. Did you all?
Well, we had talked about this being the dollar amount, but this is where, this is under section 113, it's under violations. It's probably worth repeating there that under violations that we can specify to it, but no.
I just wouldn't want to get you into a situation where you've got 2 conflicting dollar amounts.
Yeah, well, the amount that they've told me is 500 or your recommendation 250. That will be the final, whatever y'all approve will be the final, just like Joey's redoing the last change y'all made the other day on the ordinance.
Yeah, so that's 113.2, notice of violation. Building official is authorized to serve a notice of violation or order on the person responsible for the erection, construction, alteration, extension, repair, moving, removal, demolition, or occupancy of a building or structure in violation of the provisions of this code, or in violation of a detailed statement or a plan approved thereunder, or in violation of a permit or certificate issued under the provisions of this code. Such order shall direct the discontinuance of the illegal action or condition and the abatement of the violation. Yeah, no issue with that.
So your point on R13.4 is just a penalty amount. You don't.
Right.
And just reference.
And like I said, I don't have the copy that Joe has, but the copy the hard copy that was provided to me plus the PDF file that was emailed to me had a dollar amount of 500 on it. And
You're okay with it? That's right there.
oh yeah, that's another one. Let's see. You're talking about R114.4, failure to comply. Any person who shall continue any work after having been served with a stop work order, except such work as that person is directed to perform to remove a violation or unsafe condition, shall be subject to fines established by the authority having jurisdiction. Yeah, because you've already.
You just said fine, see, it doesn't say fine.
Right, that's
clean,
fine.
It's clean.
That's fine, yeah, this is what it originally looked like.
Yeah, the same thing could be right here, basically.
Right. Yeah, because that's actually covered in item 2,
Yeah,
stop work order, right? Okay. So, 2 contentious points, I would say, just based on this discussion, is items 1 through 10. My recommendation is don't require permit for items 1 through 10, all of them. And then the other point of contention would be 250. My recommendation is to lower those fines to 250. And just because somebody else puts $1,500 or $10,000, it doesn't matter to me. I'm just looking at the citizens of Lula and understanding, who we are. And I don't care what anybody else does as far as the amount of money they're charging. But I think that the fees that are proposed would be detrimental to our citizens.
Yeah. Just for clear, we hadn't made any money in building permits ever.
Right, and we shouldn't.
No, and we shouldn't. And this is a good example where you got to make it where it gets in somebody's back pocket.
You
The other question, just to bring y'all up, the other question we get pounded on? So if they have a business license, they should have insurance. Well, that's not our responsibility. I understand where they're coming from, but that's the buyer beware type deal. Well, this young lady, when I talked with her on Friday, she said, there's no reason for me to think otherwise. She's sincere. And she goes, well, I don't understand. I hired a licensed contractor. Mm-hmm. Well, how that responsibility falls back on us. This is why whatever we do, this other one's worse, where they turn around, this guy with unbelievable, the block that they're using there, you got to make it somewhat painful. You are correct that this doesn't happen. Normally your builders, we've had an issue years ago where once you get a builder in a subdivision, what have you, they know how the game is played. They know exactly what we're looking for. If we have problems, they go away because they learn off the first or second house. And new construction from the ground up always usually requires water or sewer, so we can guide them and walk them through. The only problem I've ever seen with that in years past is where when Mountain View was building and they were already halfway done and we started imposing the code, which they weren't accustomed to, and getting the builders online. But as a rule, we just don't have, those issues just don't happen. We resolve all 90% of the issues. When I say 90%, there are some minor exceptions, but those are usually similar to ones y'all have heard. I didn't think I needed a permit to build my stairs. Or, I didn't think I needed, if it's cosmetic, we, as a rule, that shouldn't be us. If it's structural, we have to touch it because you want the inspection done. But just
when you inspect it, you're liable for having inspected it. If something were, defect in that, just forewarning.
Well, that's been the law forever. That's why she carries liability.
And going back to the buyer beware, I think that's a really good policy. If you bought a used car, looked at it.
Here's the one that I've heard.
They're not going to give you your money
regularly
back.
through the years.
Yeah.
I have bought a 25-year shingle.
Mm-hmm.
And it's 20 years and it's leaking.
Yes.
The city should be responsible for that.
Yeah, that's.
I've heard that more. It's the one that stands out. I don't know how many times I've heard it, but it's the one that we don't warrant the roof or the
manufacturer defect.
Well, it is or it isn't. And I can just tell you by the experience when dealing with manufacturers, they go back to who installed it. And then they go, and it becomes, this is your friend Felton, comes back, well, if the city would have inspected it, well, we can't warrant it, very similar to what you said. So that's why they carry, and we require our, our inspector to carry insurance, because we don't warrant that work to the extent any more than she can. I mean, it's like, I will tell you right now, anybody that tells you any differently, when they go by and they look at each outlet in the house and they look in for rough and electrical, they're taking a summary. When they're finalized and they do a final, Gene, do they go in and plug in every circuit? No, they do a sample. At best, that's the best you can hope on. So, we don't want to sell the community that every little thing, it's like a sampling when you're auditor, or when you do your taxes. Aren't we all having fun doing our taxes right now? If you look deep enough, you might find an area you can either save money or you should have paid money. At least that's my experience.
Only thing I was hearing about Tony was, I was disagreeing with Tony about what goal was. And we grown men, we got to disagree.
Yes.
Absolutely.
But not knowing is no excuse.
Me on a little bit.
And we try to direct everybody. I wish we would give you examples where we just walk them through.
Well, I want to say one thing, and this is what I want you to, this is what I want to leave you with. When you're considering the recommendation to go down to 250 as opposed to 500, the example that was presented to you was a roof that was not permitted. They were running rafters straight on top of asphalt shingles. There's a lot of issues with what you can see clearly in that photo. However, when you are going to impose this fee, in addition to the permit, okay, this is the penalty that's supposed to be the deterrent to make them call first, right? To understand, to not be ignorant of the law. That fee is not going to hit that roofer. It is going to be paid by that homeowner. Not only are they going to have to pay the permit, they're going to pay that. They're going to pay the fee, and it's hit or miss whether that individual, whether it's any one of us sitting at this table, has the financial ability to sue that builder for compensation for having to have paid this fee when they trusted that individual, which may or may not have had permitting in their contract.
That goes back to that favorite
Keep in mind,
buyer beware.
When you sign a contract with that, when you sign a contract with
buyer
that builder,
beware, at the end of the day, you could say, we don't permit anything. If you want to buy a house, look at your house before you buy it.
State law
So
says,
you could,
unfortunately,
I'm
we'll
saying,
permit.
if you want to go with the buyer beware route, that's the ultimate of the buyer beware.
Well, the state law doesn't allow us to do that.
Exactly.
So
My statement was, be careful when you're considering these fees, because it could be, well, it's going to be that individual that you saw in the example. It could also be any one of us at this table, and it can be the individuals in our community that are living on $900 of Social Security and just happen to scrape up enough money to get something done that needed to be done to perhaps their roof.
Because I don't have an example of this, but normally what would have happened if we had somebody that was in violation, they would eventually sue the judge. And he's, by law, he can fine up to $1,000. This number reduces that, as it does, back to the IBC and what have you, from the 1,500. If you see what some of the other communities charge, somebody, I think I sent it out to y'all. Did you compare what we charge versus what Hall County? I sent that to y'all.
permit.
Oh my God, $1,200 more. I mean, so this is not a moneymaker for anybody, but it should be. Y'all need to find the number that satisfies the deterrent, as I've heard, and at the same time encourages people, hey, we're doing them a service. Unfortunately, that's reality. We had a young lady up on Belton Bridge, I believe, Garnet, that sold her house. You remember that? This is 10 years ago. Her husband was I think he went to work for the sheriff's department in Florida. They moved first. He moved down there when kids went to close. When they had made an addition to the back of the house, the foundation had separated. I don't know when they built it or what they ever did. canceled out the closing because the mortgage company, they didn't have a building permit. And today, we'll have people call us up, which unfortunately happens all too frequently. Their insurance company wants to see their building permit on their deck. And they built a deck that didn't have one to begin with, and, you know, we can't create one. And the problem is then, we can't go out and say, well, we'd have to inspect the footing, which goes back. But you're seeing that with more and more with mortgage companies, and you're seeing it more and more with insurance companies. They won't insure. And you haven't seen that. The insurance company will give you 30 days to reach it out.
You got, if you don't have a CO, they won't sell it to you either.
Yeah, so usually they just want, because I don't, yes, all the cities provide COs, but usually they just want to see the building permit. But it's crazy for us, and I feel for people.
I saw in the city.
You know, we can't make something we don't have.
If you hadn't been out a CO, you can see, either.
Yeah. Well, we do, you know, we do have it, but, I mean, what they want to see is the building permit and inspections. That's a challenge that we've encountered. But the good news for everybody is we worked through all those issues more so. I can't, you know, I think maybe 2 in the last year that